They were exploring how companies that are at the forefront of generative AI adoption are approaching this new wave of innovation. These companies, are disrupting the industry, and we are referring to companies like Netflix, Airbnb, Uber, Skyscanner, so you get the picture. These organizations that they have managed to push these GenAI products from experiments to actual production use cases. And so today we're exploring the learnings we get from all of these companies. And with us, we have Ksenia. So Ksenia, can you introduce a little bit yourself?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Marie and Lara. It's a pleasure to be here. So I'm Ksenia. I've been working in the big data architecture space for about 8 years now, helping a variety of different businesses design and scale their data platforms. But over the last couple of years, my focus has shifted towards generative AI. So I work there as a senior solution architect and helping companies move from an experimentation stage into production. And as you said, my main segment is digital native businesses, companies that were born digital.
And what makes digital native companies so different from other companies? What are the characteristics, the patterns that you've seen?
They're really different from traditional enterprises because their data and experimentation sit right in the front of their core business model. They move really fast. They cloud native. They're fully built in the cloud. They are not constrained by legacy systems. There's definitely less bureaucratic decision making. So that allows them to move quickly, but that also brings some challenges. How to scale responsibly, basically. All these boring things like governance, observability, maturity, sometimes it lag behind their desired speed of innovation. So they can prototype quickly, but sometimes it can be challenging to move to productionalizing stage, maintain this reliability if you don't think in advance about the goal,
Excellent. And so if we deep dive into the digital native business itself, there are different categories of the maturity of these kind of businesses if you think of them from an GenAI lens. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think we definitely can split them by the type of use cases they're working on and maturity level. So there are some type of companies like AI native companies. Basically, AI is their product itself. So these companies are really close to research. They constantly testing new models. They care deeply about model quality. They always engage domain experts to build some high quality applications. At the same time, we have other type of companies where maybe they're using GenAI just to boost the internal growth, maybe customer experience. For example, they're building some chat assistants, some recommendation engines, for example. So here GenAI competes with traditional ML models or even human workflows. And there is the third part where GenAI is used to streamline internal productivity, like operations efficiency and so on. So companies are using GenAI there for internal tools like content generation, maybe knowledge base. They tend to prefer black box solution there without going with a lot of in-house custom things. But so they want to move quickly with these internal use cases. At the same time, it's really difficult to justify the business impact because these internal use cases, they are not linked to consumers. So I would say there is a big chance it will remain in POC experimentation stage if you're not thinking properly about the impact.
And from your experience, what are the most common pitfalls or mistakes that companies make when they start projects that involve GenAI as a whole?
Yeah, that's a good question. Obviously, it's still like not having clear business goal, like doing it for hype, for example. I think more important is to speak about when companies working on GenAI project, they do not need to treat it as one-off project. They need to think about it as a long-term capability. So basically, how the functionality you developed helped broader in organization rather than for this specific use case. Companies are investing a lot in SME knowledge, domain knowledge, defining products evaluation metrics, optimizing their models. There definitely should be some AI strategy in place, how all these things can be reused across different use cases, how you can bring more value there into your business rather than spending a fortune probably for some one model which resolve some one specific use case. And at the same time, I think we all care about business metrics, right? We don't need to forget about technical requirements. Like, does your technical setup, does it align with your budget? Because sometimes company forget about it. This is super important.
I think also like sometimes when you work with very technical teams, and because the company is technology first and software engineer first, they like have a lot of input in the decision making, but sometimes they go after an interesting problem to solve from a technical perspective. And that's why sometimes the business KPIs can be overlooked. Have you noticed that sometimes, or has that been?
100%. So when it comes down to defining technical, maybe business metrics to justify your GenAI project, we recommend, to go in a specific way. So if, for example, if your product is related to consumer apps, if it's used by external users, for example, I would recommend to start thinking about user metrics first. Like, what would be the user uptake, engagement, retention, satisfaction, maybe. And after you'll think, how can I measure it? Obviously, we have this online evaluation process, which we need to start from the beginning, of course. But there's it can be pretty complex, to understand how you can measure user engagement. For example, in some businesses, the log length can be really good example, like good metric to do it. But in some cases, it's just showing that model doesn't provide the relevant responses all the time. The same with thumbs up, thumbs down. The thumbs up won't be a good metric here because we actually need to keep user be engaged with him in a longer period. So it really depends on the business. The moment you start using your LLMs with real users, internal, external ones, doesn't matter. Capture these metrics for online evaluation. So this is the first one, right? We start with these user metrics. This will help us to define the technical metrics. Based on that, you probably will get this understanding what is the required latency there, what is the required accuracy, model quality, maybe some drift metrics also. But as you said, Laura, all of that should go eventually to the business metrics like revenue uplift, maybe cost saving, maybe some productivity gains. This is super important.
And something you said before made me think, you said people sometimes think of GenAI projects as one-off, and then you recommend them thinking of it as a process in the way that something you built in project A can be reused or replicated in project B. And one example for this can be when you're creating some business evaluation metrics, how can you reuse the same metrics to other projects?
Exactly.
The other thing that made me think was, I agree on people should not think of it as one-off and think of it as a process, but an iterative process that you have to think of the GenAI projects as things that will evolve all the time, that you have to maintain and grow and update as the business moves and drifts, right? And I map it back to the data science ways of working. We had always monitoring, checking for drift. And I think agentic projects and AI projects should be seen the same way. That is a thing that evolves, moves, and you have to change it as it goes, right?
100%. It's also quite important to have some realistic expectations there. Most of the project failed before because of this unrealistic, maybe unclear expectations of what GenAI can and can't do right now. So I think it's really important to think about it also.
And so from your experience, what have you seen working well versus what's not?
I think we already understand that GenAI can be good with some basic stuff, like some structured insights on top of unstructured data, some classic use cases like summarization, generation, contextual Q&A. But what I'm always recommending to not just for companies, for businesses, but just for us, people who interacting with GenAI day to day, is to do some manual research, some experimentation, hands-on experimentation. I recommend your domain experts, your SMEs, go and play with LLM to understand how it works in your specific line of business. After some iteration, they find some patterns in hallucinations or in defining what safety means in your specific organization, like how it's different from a non-financial medical safety, what additional guidelines you need to add there to build your judges, for example. They may need to spend more time on defining guidelines, understanding how LLM works, how it can be helpful for your specific line of business. So this is an iterative process you can't avoid.
I think I've noticed that can work well is that you need to automate everything. So for example, now we're developing evals platform where you can have LLM judges, look at your traces and evaluating the quality of the responses, etc. But when you start, it's always nice to at least do a bit of manual work to just get a sense of your data so that then you bring in something automated to review the traces. Do you see that? Or do you think we're really going towards an end state where everything is going to be automated?
I think yes and no, right? That's a great question. I got asked recently from some domain experts, do I really need to invest in building judges, evaluation stuff now if it won't be probably irrelevant, if AGI probably will replace all of that? So basically we'll get AGI, which will evaluate our target model and will provide answers if it's good or not. Or there will be another AGI model who will basically provide these responses and they will be communicating with each other. This is, or maybe just one model, right? So it can be multiple options. We do not know it yet, but what we know that investing in evaluation is very important. And the guidelines, the metrics you define now, it won't change your metrics, your product metrics will be important all the time. And probably you still want to evaluate your, advanced AGI model just to make sure it works in line with your business. So working with domain experts, getting their knowledge translated into some guideline judges, this is very important, but your knowledge won't go anywhere. So domain expert probably will need to think how the new functionality will be baked into AI. There is different story with fine-tuning though, because fine-tuning is a never-ending exercise, right? If your label data set is growing, you probably want to fit it into your model. We really hope at some point this won't be necessary in the future. We already see how we're moving from fine-tuning to reinforcement learnings like PPO, DPO, reward model. So it's already happening.
So as a conclusion, what would you recommend? Maybe don't hire an army of annotators, but still hire some so that you can do some manual QA. Did I understand that?
Yes, I think so, because it's always combination of both. Another thing is analyzing this annotation, basically how different annotators annotate data and if it correlates with each other, So if we can really trust annotators, so this is also quite important.
Interesting, how we put our human biases into annotating data sets.
Exactly. So we definitely need it now, but in the future, some of this manual work hopefully will be uploaded to the models.
I think that they are SMEs because they have some knowledge about the business or about the data sets that are not documented anywhere. And so if these people, for some reason, I don't know, retire or they leave the business, this knowledge is lost. So there is a huge effort now on how do we push this knowledge into the system so that then you can automate the system. This talk can go very meta, but the idea is this, how do you push the knowledge from the subject matters to the system? In this way, we do it with annotation, with judging the system, pushing this as an evaluation data set.
Yeah, 100%.
Cool. And so do you see digital natives approach then the evaluation process as part of the product iteration?
Yes, I think we definitely recommend to go them with this direction and invest a lot in the evaluation process. Sometimes they a bit hesitant. Why should I spend a lot of time on understanding the product rather than optimizing the model, defining the prompts? That's why the approach we usually recommend to go is to start really small, pick the most important use cases right now, set of questions like golden data set. Let's make sure it works well. Let's put a good eval system in place, which will track all these important questions to make sure they works in the right way. And let's scale it. And even if you have this evaluation framework approach from the beginning, it will help you to scale properly because it will happen really fast. In a way, how you start with maybe 1K of questions, scale it to real users, and you will get thousands of different questions. And the quality drastically will go down. So you will need to have this approach to how to evaluate it, how to feed this new data into your label data set, how to use this human in the loop feedback, all these things. We need to set them up from the beginning.
Do you see a lot of fine-tuning use cases nowadays? Going back to
yeah, that's a good question because I think the trend definitely has changed over the last year. Before we had this presumption that companies wanted to have one big fine-tuned model, reuse it for multiple use cases. Now we see it probably won't work. And we're moving towards fine-tuning middle average sized models for some niche use cases, and maybe having multiple of them, maybe fine tune even in one domain, fine tune one model for Q&A, another one for some summarization stuff, or maybe providing recommendation things, for text generation piece. We definitely see it. Also, I mentioned this, how we moved from fine tune to reinforcement learning. This is the definite trend I think we will see more and more, because with classic fine tuning, it's a bit difficult to scale. We just feed this labeled data. We need more labeled data, so we need to annotate this data to feed it. And we do not get some advanced reasoning out of this fine tuning. We basically just, we just imitate examples we fed into the model.
Amazing. And then what is your advice for companies who are starting their GenAI adoption now? So how do other business learn from what is happening on the digital native business side?
One trend I see in for digital first companies is, and I think this definitely makes sense, just don't lock in yourself into one model, because it's just not sensible from commercial technical perspective nowadays. Think about how you can build this technical setup where you can change models really like in a simple way, not just, new version of model, but experiment with different vendors. As I said before, metrics driven POC, this is must have, right? We need to define these metrics from the beginning. We not speaking enough about judges. I have a feeling like how judges can help, how they reflect your product.
LLM judges.
Yes, of course, yes. Not judges, of course, yeah. How investing in building good LLM judges can help you to automate your the whole evaluation piece, and it will help you later to understand your product and how it evolves.
For me also on this one, just to add, is how do you bring any business specific KPI to the judging process? Like you bake it as part of your eval data set being used by judges.
Yes, 100%. So there are definitely some technical metrics, but your business, your product metrics, probably some usefulness stuff, maybe groundness, all these things, they will be must have to evaluate in your judges. And as I said, we saw that they can be so different. Usefulness for, medical chatbot and for financial advisor can be completely different. It will be it really depends on the domain you're working on.
A follow-up question on this is, we hear a lot that, when these non-technical SME people are helping to tune these judges, they feel that the judges are not really getting the ideas. Have you seen are there any best practices on how to guide these SMEs on the tuning of the judge process?
I genuinely believe that tuning judge in a technical way shouldn't be. This should be, first of all, this should be automated. Shouldn't be a concern for domain experts. Domain experts should think what is important for the product eventually, and they need to see the patterns where it works bad and where it works good. This is what they need to understand. All other pieces, how it will become better over time. This is the job for data engineers, infrastructure engineers, and this stuff already can be automated. Again, there are some great frameworks to optimize your prompts, for your judges, for example. So let domain experts think about what is important for business and capture the limitations of LLM to iteratively improve the product rather than thinking about all these technical things.
Ksenia.
Thank you.